what would it be like? Jesus said, make disciples of nations. Said that to his disciples. So let's not do a nation for you individually now. Let's just do you doing one disciple. If God gave you one person that just would mimic you, not in the negative sense, but let's say imitate you day and night. Okay, let's just not deal with your thoughts. Maybe they could do your words, but your actions. And they just did everything you did every day. What would that look like to that disciple if they just did you every day? I mean, what time you got up, when you prayed, how long you prayed, how you prayed, when you got into the Word, how long you were in the Word, what you did when you talked to them, about what television you looked at, if you looked at television, what newspaper you read, what you thought about it, on and on, for the whole day. Now, the reason that that's important is Jesus' disciples, as, again, I marked them because, in these Gospels, Jesus identified who these disciples were. And that was interesting looking at. And in one of the books, the Gospels, he named them successively, who they were. And I marked them down, of course, in each of the places where I said for you to look at. Of course, I have my fingers in them and not finding where I had it at because I wanted to. Yes, here it is. In Mark's account, in third chapter, 13th verse, it says, after Jesus went up on a mountain and called out the ones he wanted to go with him. Now, this is interesting because I've mentioned to you that you were sovereignly made. Well, they were too, but now Jesus is out of the people he brought into the earth. He now is picking out disciplined ones. And they came to him. Then he appointed, 12 of them and called them his apostles. Wait a minute. So wait a minute, you're saying there were more of them? Look at what this is saying again. Again, I'm going to read verse 13. Afterward, Jesus went up on a mountain and called out the ones he wanted to go with him. And they came to him. Then he appointed 12 of them and called them his apostles. So obviously, they're more than the 12 originally. And then he said this, and they were to accompany him, and he would send them out to preach, giving them authority to cast out demons. These are the 12 he chose. Now, okay, so now my point isn't to let you know in the collective of disciples there were more than the 12, but to identify the point that these were sovereignly both brought into the world and now sovereignly giving an assignment. Now, I just believe for each of us, it's important for us to say, if we're to make disciples, what would it look like, as I said to Miss Ellenwood, what would your disciple do every day, doing what you do? I'm not just talking about just in her case, how long she's on the computer, how much of what I teach she documents in print, when she eats, who she talks to, what she talks about, just on and on. That disciple will do everything. Now, the reason I can say that is that actually these disciples for 3.5 years had to follow Jesus explicitly by looking at his life for 3.5 years. I'm just saying, what would it look like if people followed your life for 3.5 years? Now, here's what we can acknowledge. Even if you have a disciple and they live with you, they wouldn't see everything you do every moment. I mean, we can get really specific about it. But even if they did live with you, what would the priorities of their day for 3.5 years look like? Would you be a godly person to follow? Does everything you do equate to godliness? See, now, and then I went on with Miss Ellenwood. I said, well, my disciple, if they were with me all the time, they would go bowling sometimes. And they wouldn't play golf as much, but last year I probably played 5 times. I don't know the exact number, but not as much as I say I used to. I used to play once a week. So that's 52 times in a year. Play twice a week, look at that. And you have to go back decades, but at the point that I was getting up praying and being at the church in Richmond at 5 a.m. every morning, that was every morning. My disciple would have had to have gotten up to be at prayer every morning. So now, in following you as a disciple, what would that person become? Because these disciples that Jesus selected, appointed, became what he was when he wasn't there. Now I've noticed I haven't had anyone now to actually be with me for that long a time. I have had people live with me. I'm thinking about 2 or 3 of them. I can think about Ramon Dees. That's somebody that was in our campus ministry that moved down to Atlanta with Brian Crute and that church that was formed down there. I can think about Rolando Lamb. He and his family lived with me. I can think about that. And what did those people become? What did they get out of me? Did they keep it? Are they walking in it now? I was thinking about Rolando just yesterday. I intend to call him even this week. Maybe even ask him this question, because he still has a ministry where he's discipling young men, not in the level that Jesus did his disciples, meaning I don't know of very many people, except if you're on a missionary, you could be YWAM Youth with a Mission or some other missionary organization where the people follow a pattern of what they do on their assignments. Usually still, they're not doing what one individual does. Now, I did notice that with Lynn Green, for example, in England, who started March for Jesus with a couple others, they had disciples living there in England, but they didn't do everything they did. They saw a lot of what they did. So even discipleship at the level Jesus did it is a challenge for us humans to do it at that level. And even if we did it at that level, could we get the results Jesus got out of his disciples? Well, it's ordained. Because when Jesus told his disciples to make disciples, he was saying, I'm not telling you to do different than what I did. I'm telling you to do exactly as I did. Doesn't mean that the process is the same, but here's what you got to get. The principles have to be the same. Man, I am up in here with you guys this morning. But, I'm hot. Glory to God. And I'm not talking nonsense. If you look at Mark 3, where he chooses his disciples, it says there again in verse 14, then he appointed 12 of them and called them his apostles. They were to accompany him, and he would send them out to preach, giving them authority to cast out demons. These are the 12 he chose. Now, that discussed what he would do with them, but they didn't start out doing that. They started out seeing him do that. What they were going to do, Jesus demonstrated that by their being with him. What would people see if they were with you? What would people remember about the first words they heard of you? I've had people tell me, when I first heard you speak, they tell me that. I've had people come up to me and said, wow, you still got it. These were like one Promise Keepers people. I'm talking about some of the leaders and other organizations said, But they don't follow me. They're not my disciples. They don't have to be, but do they live by the principles? Did you get it? Did you get it? What I'm talking about? See? In some cases, as I look back, I don't think they got it. I mean, some of the people that pray with me at 5 a.m., I think they got some of it. I think that without my presence, their lives were different in terms of, I'm talking about basic dedication, their own decision making, which a person has the power of choice, but it didn't seem to take them to a greater sense of a devotion for God. And Jesus says the latter is greater than the former. I mean, his expectation is that the disciples would carry on. Like, let's do it. He wasn't kidding with it. I don't know if our generation get it. At least on a principle level. Are you principally a house of prayer? Are you principally a discipler? Are you principally a person that lives by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God? See? Are you principally humble? Are you principally a servant? See, that's, in other words, how you process it is different for each of us than the principle. The principle is a fixed value. The process is a matter of how you see working it out in your life. See? Both of those principles should emanate wherever they are, whatever they are, in either level, from God himself. Because you're authorized to be godly. Here are the disciples. Look, that's Matthew 3. It'd be interesting for you to look at them again, because there's some things I could say about them that's important in these readings as you do read-throughs. And in that kind of thinking, in chapter 2, in verse 18, it says, once when John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, some people came to Jesus and asked, why don't your disciples fast like John's disciples and the Pharisees do? See? Wow. That's a discipleship question there. They were looking at the process, not the principle. And you can get the principle by continuing to read on in the red, starting at verse 19. See? They were into the process. Jesus was into the principle, the foundation to life. Okay? Now back over in chapter 3 and verse 16. These are the 12, Simon, whom he named Peter, James, John, the sons of Zebedee, but Jesus nicknamed them sons of thunder. That's pretty good right there. Sons of thunder. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed him. Wow, how would you like a parenthesis by your name? Yeah. Jesus mentions Judas Iscariot, or the Bible mentions Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed Jesus. If your name is mentioned, have you betrayed Jesus in getting away from the principles you once lived by? See, I know we often think of the betrayal as what he actually did to Jesus by selling him for 30 pieces of gold to the Pharisees. The betrayal was his violation of the created order at the standard God ordained him to live by. See? You can be a Christian and yet you have betrayed the principles that you were taught. And some of your behavior now is not what it used to be. You never became a discipler. See? You got married and you insulated. Or you never got married and you, as an individual, just kept life about you. You can be saved. But you wouldn't have been able to be one of Jesus' disciples because he gave them a specific assignment. Nobody is created without responsibility. Both what? Watch. Character and responsibility. That's the nature of the Lord in your behavior and the acts that he wants you to get done by him bringing you into this world. Both of those are vital. And this is what you find in these disciples that came from the disciples. Jesus chose them specifically. Not only brought them into the world, but selected them among his creation to be the ones that were going to do what he eventually told them to do here in the Great Commission after his resurrection in Matthew 28, verse 16. Then the 11 disciples left for Galilee, going to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some of them doubted. Okay? Now he's talking about the 12. Jesus came and told his disciples, I've given all authority. I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples, look at this, of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this: I'm with you always, even to the end of the earth, of the age. I was talking to a woman. I don't know if she is on this line now. I don't know if I ever told her about this line. She could be listening to this, but one of the people she wanted to be like was Lydia. But listen, it's interesting that all of Jesus' disciples were males in the ones he chosen. But does that mean women should not disciple? I'm just saying. Hey, ladies who are listening to me, you're my kingmaker women, some of you on the prayer line with me. Do you have one disciple? I mean, okay, I'm not saying are you pastoring a church right now, or are you a fivefold designee? I mean, they're going like berserk over it. I don't know if it's wrong in terms of being a prophet or prophetess. I had somebody just give me an advertisement about a certain person, how excellent this guy is as a prophet, and therefore, on the basis of that, I should register to the conference. And what that person probably is not thinking like I would think, and that is this. I think that person's excellence in the prophetic is his personal relationship with God and his assignment for God. But you think I need that? I mean, are you just using your mailing list and sending it out, and what you think about this person, you think I put a strong enough value on that to want to come to your conference? Even by your behavior, the person that's asking me. See, why wouldn't I just listen to you? You see, and I want to be clear about it. That person clearly doesn't listen to me. Now, in my view, I could help them get somewhere. I could help a lot of people get somewhere, but not everyone is interested in where I would take them. And Jesus wasn't suggesting the Great Commission mandate to these guys. To be a disciple, you got to do what you're told. And to be a discipler, you got to tell people what God wants out of them without being political. I was talking to someone recently, and they were telling me, well, I got some things that, I did that's bad, and, and they were talking. I said, stop the political talk with me. What did you do? Where are you now? And I went into it with them. And then they woke up from it. But a lot of people do that. Their yays are not yays, their nays are not nays. You can't disciple anybody like that. You can, but they'll be Like Jesus said about the Pharisees, there'll be twice the whatever you are. In his case, their case, he said the devil you are. Traverse land and sea to find somebody you can disciple and then make them twice as bad. Well, at least they know the disciple. They're going to be judged for it. But what I'm asking you right now on the line with me is there anybody who sees the level of your devotion to God that says, my God, if I could just spend some time with you, because I want to be like you, how you are must be what God is like. Is anybody saying that to you now? Now, in this day and time, I don't know. Because if you're a person that's clearly responsible, they're thinking, well, I don't know if I can be that. I don't know if I could be that responsible and be that available. Yeah. Jesus' disciples couldn't think like that and be his disciples. They had to lay down everything they had to in their own priorities and take up his priority. Now, in that case, then I'm asking you, are you a real disciple? See? Now, for me, in the last, say, month or so, I've had a number of what I would have called my disciples not make the decisions I would have made. And some of them, I don't even believe Jesus would have made them. They're not wicked, just not discipleship decision making. See? And I believe that's critical right now. That our decisions, I talked with a young person, he may be on, his wife was talking about, I'm sure that Pastor Eileen, who leads the Kingmakers, would love that conference, April 29th, to come to it. They said, I got to come to it. After talking with me, they said, I got to come to the conference. And that person asked if they could serve the bishops, if the bishops come to be in my home with me during that Friday for the Kingmaker conference. The women are at the Kingmaker and the bishops being with me in my home. Now, there's a letter I'm going to edit and send out today. Those that can be there will be there. Those that can't, they can't. It's okay. In my view, I need more disciples anyway. I do need them. And I don't think I should go any further without thinking about building more and stronger disciples. I think that in some cases, I've just let people decide for themselves. And the ones I've let decide for themselves, they're grown people. I had my son tell me, my daughter's 50 years old. She has to make her own decisions. Yeah, but the Bible still says in the multitude of counsel there's safety. In the mouth of two or three witnesses, let every word be established. That's particularly true with those who are spiritually over you and biologically over you. You again, I said this before, you heard me say it. And I've had maybe one or two of my children say to me some things that would indicate they wouldn't have made the decisions I made in relation to them. So in reality, they're governing how I parent them. Not debauchery, not lying, stealing, cheating. And I said this to one of them. I said, look, I've been young, your age, but now I'm old. You are young, even at, say, my daughter's 50. Both my daughter and my son, two oldest, are both 50. But they've never been 76. I have 26 more years of experience than they have. I've forgotten stuff they may never know. I think in the biblical construct, in the creative construct, the elder actually meant they were chronologically older, but they were also elder in terms of their experience. That's why God says, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's a generational transfer of not only the assignment, but of knowledge. Isaac should have handled himself differently than Abram. The latter is better than the former, greater than the former. Jacob should have been better than Isaac. See? Not less than. And to separate from the one that discipled you, when the one that discipled you is still hidden it. Now that's nonsense. That is nonsense. A child that had a daddy that raised them to be godly. And sure, the children can make decisions on their own, but there should always be an honor that the children to their parents, especially if they're Christian, that they would maybe not follow exactly everything their parents would say to them, but at least give them the honor of asking them some questions about some of their decision making concerning the future. You mean as because you're a child, you know everything exactly? Who would be more into you than, say, the parent that raised you, that lived for God? Who would give their life for you like a parent? I'm talking about godly people now. So why wouldn't you come to them and ask them in critical areas, unless you've made up your mind already what you're going to do, or unless you have some issues that you're holding that you haven't resolved? They'll be resolved in heaven. It's nonsense. I got some new sons now. I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet. I don't know how I'm going to disciple them. They live in different states. I've always had other sons. Some of them are other races. And some of my sons, I just required their behavior to be bibliocentric, not give them natural responsibilities. I think that there's a mistake in that, because the natural responsibilities also prove a visibility in terms of that person's yieldedness to the principles that maybe they learned from you or through you. Wow. It's pretty serious. Evidently, I didn't just start thinking about this. There's a lot going on in the world right now. And yeah, in a lot of different. I had someone send a message to me that they still don't like my politics. Politics? Politics? What about my living for God? That's what I'm about. I have a perspective of people from a biblical perspective that are in politics. See, I respect their assignment if they're yielding to God in it. If they're not, then to that degree, I don't respect it. I don't know of any Christian that's perfectly living a Christian life, and I certainly don't know a political person who is. I'm not going to hate on them. I'm going to pray for them as God leads me. I don't believe my prayers are in vain. I got Christian people who have been on my prayer list and they still done nonsense. How could you do nonsense with me praying for you? Because you have the power of choice. The preeminent Spirit of God that would say, be like the cloud that led Israel by day and the fire by night, is the prayers of this bishop over numbers of the people who are on my prayer list, but they got to yield to it. Not everybody yielded to Moses' leadership, even though it was clear that he was hearing from God. And he lived on a principle that he was called the great shepherd of Israel, of a whole nation of people. One man's relationship with God led them out of the bondage of the strongest nation in that day. So bless you. Look, be encouraged, for the joy of the Lord is your strength, is my prayer for you. God bless.